I'm going to share with you 20 years experience in jail, actually, with security prisoners. I have my career in the army. When I was still in the army, I conducted research. Started with the dispatchers of suicide bombers that failed, but the dispatcher, who are the leader, who are the key leaders, and after that, 20 years inside jail, face to face with terrorists, that actually I want to emphasize that Orit gave us a great background, but to emphasize that the same petri dish of all those organizations and so-called lone wolf, they are not so long as you see. There are a bunch of wolves that just we saw in the terror attack that carried out in London, that with this inspiration of the social media, and not just the social media, also the mosque, meetings with each other, and we are, as a Western world, have the biggest mistake by defining them as crazy people, by defining the acts as workplace violence or things like that. No, we need to define the enemy. So let me start with telling you a story. 20 years ago, I interviewed Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, who was the guy who, Sheikh Yassin was the former head and the founder of the Hamas organization. And as I said, that Hamas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Jabhat al-Nusra, all those organizations and Muslim Brotherhood are from the same sources. And we have the Shia versions of those organizations like Hezbollah and the militias that we see in Iran, and also as Iran is state-sponsored terrorism that nobody talk about. But let's start with Yassin. I went to jail with my husband, Dr. Anat Berko, who is better than I in Arabic. I'm from Iraqi origin, but he's the Ashkenazi who fluent in Arabic. And when I was interviewing for 5 hours and more than that, he told me his actually perception about the relation between Islam and the West. And he said it like that. It's the relation between Islam and the West, it's like a bee and a flower. The bee sucks the nectar, which means the technology, the advance, and all the modern life in technology that the West can offer, but after that, smash the flower. We denied everything that related to the lifestyle of the West, especially Islam rejects all the cultural and the social aspects which contradict and the Sharia law. For example, the life of whoredom, of unveiled women, all immoral factors in the West. And we reject, and it will reject by us. And I told him, Sheikh Yassin, tell me, if you have a daughter, and he said, I have 11 children, and my daughter is the most talented in my family. So would you able her to go to give lectures? Or yes, I would love that she'll be a doctora like you, a doctora Anat, as they called me when I came to visit them so many times and conducted my research. And I said, but you know, Sheikh Yassin, I have a lot of traveling. I have a lot of work, not in the house, although I'm a mother of three children. I have my career. Would you allow your daughter to do so? And he said, yes, in a certain circumstances, which mean if she'll present in Europe, I wouldn't allow her to present naked. And I said, Sheikh Yassin, do you think that professor in Europe or women in Europe present naked to the audience? Silence. At that time, you see that there is another rationale of those people. And you see that, and it's something parallel that we like to think that they are thinking in the same way like us, but it doesn't work like that. I call this, in my research, a splitting. On one hand, they have normative life, but on the other, it's death work, because they legitimize our lifestyle, they humanize our people, and I think that it doesn't, we are not speaking just about the Jews, as they like to say, but also other religions, Christians, and the best example that I can give you is about my family, Jewish family, fled from Iraq before, when Israel established, after pogroms, and many Jews from Arab countries and from Europe, for sure, after the Shoah. But the same thing happened to the Christian in the Middle East. It took a few years, but it's the same process. I call this phenomenon many, many years ago in my books, The Path to Paradise and The Smarter Bomb, jihad tourism. It was before we defined ISIS. It was before we called this organization in names. But the people who are looking, then the youngsters who are looking for thrill and adventures, they are looking for meaning of life, they are looking to feel that they worth something, and they can rape and slaughter other people in the name of Allah, without impunity, without to put a blame on. This is how it works, and because of that, they're doing so. And, I would like to read one thing that I think 10 years ago, before ISIS, I emphasized that a 15-year-old boy, that he didn't come from poverty, he didn't come from a miserable life. He said he has a spouse, a girlfriend, good life, in the Palestinian Authority, under the Palestinian Authority. And he told me, all that is forbidden in this world, permitted in paradise. Paradise has everything: Allah, freedom, the Prophet Muhammad, and my friends, the Shaheeds, the martyr. There are 72 virgins, and there are a lot of things I can't even describe. I find everything in paradise: a river of honey, a river of beer and hard alcohol. Remember, everything that is forbidden in this world is allowed in paradise. And for us, when we are thinking about paradise and the 72 virgins, I interviewed suicide bombers that felt that they thought that the first sexual experience that they will have will be in paradise with the eternal virgin. They thought about that a lot around sexuality, and especially in the age that the sexual identity is uncertain. So a lot around this. The other thing that the jihadi ideas control their life, and it's about become, and I defined it, and I actually suggested to add it to the DSM, the Psychiatrist Codex. I defined it as Shahada mania. Why it's Shahada mania? Because this obsessive-compulsive thinking around paradise and what they are going to get in paradise become something that controls their life. They cannot stop thinking about that. The same like obsessive-compulsive behavior that you see people who clean their hands like so many times a day. Same thing. And they are around that. It looks for us as Westerners, are they really believe that they are going to have this alternative world? They prepare themselves to come to this world. They actually indoctrinate others to come to the next world. And more than that, they will spare the torture of the grave of their own families. So 70 people from their own family will go directly to paradise without the torture of the grave that they believe in. One time I interviewed a female suicide bomber that failed, that her brother was a suicide bomber that blew himself up in Tel Aviv. And she told me, and I asked her, why you want to do that? You have a shaheed in the family, a martyr, so you have 70 places in paradise for the family. And she told me very seriously, but we are a very big family. We need more room for all the family. And they believe in that. Just a word, I have like a few minutes? Okay. If you put the blame on me and you reject me, I'll reject the rejectors. It's very similar to criminals. And also we see that a lot of things are working like subculture of gangs. And instead of like having, doing drugs together, they are around this kind of thrill and adventures and terrorism. So another thing is very important, that they have a feeling that they have the life of everybody in their hands. Very, very powerful feeling. As one of the female martyrs, Shahida, would-be Shahida, told me that, you know, I can choose who will live and who will die. And I regret, I didn't do that. So you don't have to put the blame on me. But I told her, you're not Allah. You're not God. But this feeling of omnipotent, that they can choose who will live and who will die. I can go to the metro station, I can go to the mall, I can go to the restaurant, and I can do that. So the conflict between inferiority in their life and this feeling is very, very powerful. They reject the Western civilization and acting in a very impulsive way, and the perception of life is black and white. There is no gray in the middle. We are the good and you are the bad guys. And they take all the moral justification from religion. I want to, without feeling any guilt, I want to emphasize, not all the Muslims are terrorists, for sure. Actually, they are the first victims. If we see right now, there are the first victims of terrorism. But try to remember how it starts so many years ago with hijacking the aircraft by the Palestinians. Even the mentor of bin Laden was a Palestinian guy. So a lot of imitation, copy-paste of terror attacks we see right now all over the globe. But I don't want to speak just as a researcher, just to sum up as a parliamentarian, because actually the Prime Minister, because of my expertise, asked me to join the Likud party, and I became a parliament member after 2 months when he asked me. I want to tell you that in 2 years in the Knesset, I have legislation related to counterterrorism, and Senator, I think that you can adapt this legislation. First of all, you have minor underage that commit terrorism. How to solve this problem that minors under the age of 14 commit terrorism, and to find a shelter for them, not to put them in jail, but to isolate them, because they are also sometimes murderers. The other thing, criminal record of terrorism, not to mix between criminality and terrorists, because it's different, so the police can identify them. We have a special legislation around terrorism. Unfortunately, we have also in the parliament, in the Knesset, one of the Arab Knesset member who smuggled cell phones to terrorists in the Israeli jail, to Palestinian terrorists. So the other thing, who can be in the parliament and not to use the platform of the parliament to conduct terror attacks against the country by legislation, by being there, by incitement and using the platform and the microphone and the open space and the plenary session against your country. And this is something that I think that we need to take in consideration. Just the last sentence that I want to tell you, that in this time, I think that politically correctness has become a device to distorting the truth. So the West should put aside this politically correctness, should put also the ego aside, collaborate together. We have the same enemy, and we are in the middle of the third World War. So for the young generation of those people that convert to Islam and Islamists, it's the target is to be a shaheed or not to be at all. Thank you.